Hello, I'm Congressman Mark Takano. I proudly represent California's 41st Congressional District, and I co-chair the bipartisan Congressional Energy Storage Caucus. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all on this second day of the National Energy Storage Summit. I want to thank the Berkeley Lab and its Energy Storage Center for leading the charge on this important topic, and my staff looks forward to continued collaboration with you all. Last summer, Congressman John Curtis and I launched the Energy Storage Caucus for the 117th session of Congress. Together, we expect the bipartisan caucus will help build member and staff understanding of the energy storage landscape. And through coordinated advocacy, we will be able to promote relevant legislation and necessary investments. I'm hopeful that the upcoming summit panel on regulatory and legislative activities spurring energy storage deployment in the U.S. will help support the goals of the caucus. The future of renewable energy and other emerging energy technology is reliant on robust battery storage technology. I'm proud of my work in the battery storage space since becoming a member of Congress in 2013, especially the passage of my Battery Storage Innovation Act in 2020. But we cannot do this work alone. Policymakers, researchers from academia, federal agencies, and industry must work together to solidify the domestic battery supply chain and spur uptake of energy storage technologies. I'm pleased to see individuals from all these areas participating in the summit this year. With that, thank you and enjoy the rest of the summit.
Hi, I'm Congressman John Curtis. It's my pleasure to represent Utah's 3rd Congressional District. I also serve on the House Energy and Commerce Committee and I'm part of the Climate Subcommittee. In addition, I recently founded the Conservative Climate Caucus, and I've had a lot of fun bringing conservatives to the table to talk about our important climate issues. Nothing more important than storage in this whole debate. I'm also pleased to co-chair the Energy Storage Caucus and be part of that important effort in educating members and bringing Congress together as a partner with business in our solutions. I wish you the best at this summit and hope you are successful, and I look forward to working with all of you and seeing you all in person real soon.
Great. Well, good afternoon, all, and welcome to a panel on regulatory and legislative activities spurring solar deployment. I'm Ryan Weiser, a senior scientist both in the Electricity Markets and Policies Department at Berkeley Lab, but also in the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Policy. And I'll be serving as the moderator for today's panel. And what a fabulous session we have in store for you today, with panelists who will be touching on really most of the major leverage points for policy and regulation related to storage on the power grid. We have on the panel Jignasa Gadani, Director of the Office of Energy Policy and Innovation at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. Welcome, Jignasa. We have Delphine Hu, Director of California Regulatory Affairs at the California Independent System Operator, or CAL-ISO. Welcome, Delphine. We have Charlotte Mitchell, Chair of the North Carolina Utilities Commission, who also serves on the board of the directors of the Organization of PJM States and also on EPRI's Advisory Council. Welcome and thank you. And then finally, last but not least, we have Adam Berry, professional staff member with the U.S. Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. So we're in for a treat today. We're in for a treat in part because we have 4 leaders, each at an apex, a different apex of energy storage regulation and policy. But we also really have our bases covered, as we have representation from both federal and state policymaking bodies, as well as panelists who lead critical work related to both federal and regional power grid regulation and operation. Now, given that panel composition for the discussion to come, it will come as no surprise that we'll be examining legislative and regulatory actions to increase the domestic reach of energy storage, with maybe a special focus on the power grid. We'll also be breaking this session into 2, maybe 3 parts. In the first part, we're going to hear from each of the panelists individually so that you, the audience, will begin to see the contours of the various policy and regulatory puzzle pieces that relate to energy storage. After that, we'll then bring the panelists together to answer some broader cross-cutting questions. Maybe we'll begin to piece some of those puzzle pieces together. And then finally, if we have time, we'll have a couple of audience questions towards the end of the discussion. We do have a lot to cover, so let us get started. And we're going to get started with Jignasa, again, Director of the Office of Energy Policy and Innovation at FERC. And Jignasa, this is a pretty broad audience. Many, I'm sure, are familiar with FERC, but some may not be familiar with FERC. And so maybe you can start just by describing briefly what it is that FERC does.
Thanks, Ryan. Happy to. First, thank you for this invitation and giving me the opportunity to speak. I'll provide my standard disclaimer. I speak for myself and not for the commission or any individual commissioners. So with that, what is FERC? So FERC is an independent agency. It has 5 commissioners. It can have up to 5 commissioners. We currently have 5 commissioners that head up the agency. All the commissioners are nominated by the president and confirmed by Senate. The chairman is appointed by the president. So President Biden appointed Chairman Glick, who's the current chairman of the commission. We're primarily an economic regulator. We oversee rates, terms, and conditions for sales of wholesale power. So this is sales for resale. This is not what you and I as a consumer pay for. Ultimately we do, but not directly. And then also have oversight over the transmission of electricity over interstate facilities. Again, transmission over power lines that cross state lines, not the lines that come to our individual homes. That falls under the distribution system. We also oversee regional transmission organization and or independent system operators. These are RTOs, ISOs. We have a speaker that will be speaking that works at one of these entities. They operate the transmission grids over a larger footprint and also operate wholesale electric markets. They serve about 2/3 of the customers in the country. On the natural gas side, we have jurisdiction over rates, terms, and conditions over the transportation of natural gas, as well as construction of natural gas pipelines. FERC also has authority over the licensing and safety of hydropower dams, the ones that are used to produce electricity, and non-federal dams. Range of other authority, we have a range of other authority, but a couple I do want to mention is after the Western crisis and the Northeast blackout in early 2000s, Congress in 2005 gave FERC authority over the reliability of the bulk power system and expanded the enforcement authority. These are pretty significant and have played a big role in what the commission has been able to accomplish. So essentially, we're an adjudicatory body. We get filings mainly from utilities. We get entities that support them or will oppose them. The commission takes a look at that record and then issues an order, which is basically the commission's legal decision. Orders go out by majority votes, so you need at least 3 commissioners. Depending on the makeup of the number of the commissioners, it's a majority that allows the commission to act on an item. So we also advance requirements and policies, and that's done through rulemakings. And I look forward to chatting about that in a little bit. So hopefully,
yeah, that's great overview. And let's get to that next part of the discussion immediately. So FERC has a lot of jobs. Many of those jobs abut storage in various ways. And there have been 2 quite prominent orders out of FERC in recent years, very specific to storage, Order 841 and Order 2222. And so maybe you can describe what those 2 orders do and where they stand in terms of implementation.
Sure. So as I mentioned, when FERC is imposing new requirements or wants to advance a policy, they will do it through a rulemaking process that is open to the public, requires notice and comment in order to do that. So the two you mentioned, Order 841, we call the storage rule for short, and Order number 2222 is the aggregated distributed energy resources rule. Over the years, what the commission has focused on is looking for ways to remove barriers for different technologies and make sure that those technologies have an opportunity to participate in the market. And the desire to do that is to increase energy supply sources for customers and provide more affordable options for customers to meet their energy needs. In addition, some of the participation of some of these new technologies have improved the performance of the grid, allowed it to be a lot more flexible, given some of the external issues that we are facing, like the changing resource mix, weather-related issues, climate change, those types of efforts. So what the commission did is, based on staff work, research, outreach, as well as taking a look at other regions like New York and California, took that information into account. In 2016, initiated a rulemaking that allowed eligible storage and distributed energy resources, if technically capable, to participate in energy and ancillary service markets that are run by these regional transmission grid operators that I mentioned earlier, for short, RTOs, ISOs, so the wholesale markets. Storage in that context was not limited to just battery storage. We defined electric storage resources as a resource capable of receiving electric energy from the grid and storing it for later injection of electric energy back to the grid. So that's a pretty broad definition, but there was a lot of time spent on making sure we had provided as many resources as possible that had certain characteristics to participate in the markets. I will talk about aggregated DERs shortly, but with 841, or the storage rule, the commission had enough experience with that technology. That technology was becoming cost effective. And so we finalized that rule in February 2018. RTOs, ISOs had to submit revisions to their market rules and get those to us for our review. Right now, I believe most of those compliances are done. However, implementation of those rules is still ongoing, and in some regions that may take as long as 2023 or 2024. This order did go up to court, was litigated in court, but upheld. So that provides certainty to the industry. Turning to aggregated distributed energy resources. So this is a little more complicated. Distributed resources are located on the distribution system that is jurisdictional to states. However, these resources do have an opportunity to participate in the wholesale market, and the commission set out and explained that an aggregation of these resources can be another source of supply for customers. In addition, it would help lower costs and give the grid additional access to additional services. So with that, after grappling with some of the tough issues, which I can talk about later if we have time, we did a lot of outreach, technical conferences, gathered additional data, and focused on removing the barriers of distributed energy resources aggregations into the grid. I should have said DER aggregations include a range of resources. It could include demand response, storage, we're talking about storage today, distributed generation, among other types of resources. The goal was to have these resources, which on their own couldn't participate in the market, as a whole, as a group, to participate and be able to offer a range of services. Compliance with this rule is still ongoing. We have 4 filings pending before us, and 2 are expected in the near future. So again, whirlwind tour of those 2 rulemakings. I'm happy to answer any questions or specific questions that anyone may have.
No, that's great, Ignacio. Thanks for that overview of FERC, and then these 2 very important orders that most certainly will have a significant role in supporting and driving storage deployments in the future. Let's turn to you, Delphine, again, Director of California Regulatory Affairs at the California Independent System Operator, CAL-ISO. One of 7 ISOs across the nation, and obviously responsible for managing grid operations in the state of California. Also the place of a lot of interest in storage. And so maybe you can start by just telling the audience a little bit about how much storage is already participating in the California market.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you so much to LBNL for the invitation and to be on a panel with such esteemed colleagues from diverse perspectives. So let's get into some numbers. If we rewind a little bit, go back in time to summer 2020, the CAISO had less than 200 megawatts of grid-connected storage, almost all of them lithium-ion. But by the end of June this year, just less than 2 years later or so, we're looking at an estimate of 5,500 megawatts. So we have grown leaps and bounds in terms of the grid-connected storage. But that's actually an undercount, because at the CAISO, we're technology neutral. So in fact, there's more storage resources, but they're just providing different services. So for example, storage can support load drop. So there are storage resources registered actually as demand response in the CAISO market. There are also storage resources providing grid reliability services such as regulation. So I think when we think of storage, especially in the CAISO market, we tend to focus on maybe the ones that are much more visible, grid connected, sometimes standalone storage, but really storage can have a role in different parts of the market providing different services. So I hope that helps kind of give you a little bit of the landscape.
Unmute myself, the common problem. No, absolutely. Now, CAISO, I mean, every one of the ISOs is a different looking duck. They're all a bit different, all the ISOs. One of the differences in California is that we don't have a capacity market at the CAISO. Instead, we have primarily the California Public Utilities Commission that orders procurement for the major electric utilities in the state. And so what does that do to the CAISO market, and what does that do for storage in the state?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because we are unique in that manner. So we work very closely with all of the local regulatory authorities in our footprint, the largest one being the California Public Utilities Commission. But I wanted to give the audience a little bit of a sense of scale. So I said currently the market participation, at least until June this year, we're expecting about 5,500. But in February of this year, the California Public Utilities Commission actually put out a portfolio of their expectation of kind of the optimal portfolio of things to come. And by 2030, they're looking at another incremental 12,000 megawatts of grid-connected storage resources. So we're in for even more growth. And that's also an estimate of looking at not only the resources in the portfolio, but also understanding that with these resources is the state's view of not only the cost effectiveness, but also GHG targets and the ability to kind of pair with what's already on the system. And so the last couple of years, we've definitely seen a transition in what storage has done. It's gone from providing mostly kind of limited reliability services like regulation to now we're seeing more, I think, what most people are thinking of when they think of storage participation in the market, which is they're absorbing the solar in the middle of the day, and then they are discharging towards peak time when the sun sets. So they're providing that participation, which I think we're expecting. But we're also working very closely with the local regulatory authorities to really, understand some of the impacts of that regulation. So as you mentioned, there isn't a capacity market in the California ISO footprint, but we do work with the local regulatory authorities through the Resource Adequacy Program. So for example, currently the Resource Adequacy Program has a rule where the minimum duration is 4 hours in order to count as resource adequacy. But I think most folks have taken that 4-hour minimum and effectively created it as a maximum. So for almost all of the batteries that we're seeing in our market currently, they have a 4-hour duration. Technically speaking, batteries can have much longer duration, but that is currently the resource that's being contracted for, procured, and shown to us in the CAISO market. So in looking ahead, one of the things that we do want to communicate to the local regulatory authorities that are authorizing that procurement is to think broadly about, okay, what do we need 5-10 years down the road? So do we need longer duration resources? Another question is, if batteries are being paired with solar at this time, what happens when you have 7 cloudy days and you don't get the sunshine, or you have a lot of smoke coverage in the summertime? So those are all questions that come from our operational background of how we operate the grid, but then are good conversations that we want to take back to the local regulatory authorities to say, hey, here's just some things that we're seeing on the operation side. What can regulation do to make sure that we are all able to work together and be reliable?
No, that's great, Delphine. I think I probably have some more nerdy questions for you about the specifics of how storage is being integrated into the power grid, but maybe we'll hold those for a moment and turn to Charlotte here. Charlotte, again, chair of the North Carolina Utilities Commission. Of course, the North Carolina Utilities Commission oversees and regulates the electric utilities in the state of North Carolina. And so maybe you could just start at a high level describing to us a little bit about North Carolina's energy goals and where storage sort of fits into those broader goals.
Well, absolutely. Thanks, Ryan, for the question, and thank you all for the opportunity for me to be a part of this discussion today. So just a quick note on the Utilities Commission here in North Carolina. So North Carolina is primarily a traditionally regulated state. So that means that our largest electric system, our electric utilities, own and operate transmission, distribution, and generation assets. They're vertically integrated, fully regulated. The one exception to that is Dominion Energy has a bit of service territory in North Carolina, and Dominion is a member of PJM. So there is a portion of North Carolina that participates in PJM, which is an RTO, but we're primarily traditionally regulated, vertically integrated. And so my comments will focus mostly on the work that we do in that context, the work that we do with the vertically integrated electrics, since you'll hear from Delphine on sort of the ISO RTO perspective. So, my job in North Carolina as the economic regulator is to ensure that the electric utilities are providing adequate, reliable, and affordable service. I think that's a goal that's common across the country with economic regulators like me. So that's my primary job. We North Carolina very recently, in fact, it was last fall, adopted a carbon reduction mandate. So now it's law in North Carolina that the electric system reduce carbon emissions by 70% by 2030 and neutrality by 2050. That's off of 2005 levels. So that's now law on the books in North Carolina. The law also requires the Utilities Commission to adopt what we refer to as the carbon plan that provides the pathway to achieve these carbon reduction targets. And the first plan has to be adopted by the end of this year, 2022. And then it will be reviewed every 2 years thereafter. So we're hard at work already on developing the inaugural carbon plan. I anticipate, sort of bringing us back to energy storage, I anticipate that energy storage will play a significant role in the carbon plan. And I just want to say a bit, if I have time, I know I'm close here, but I'll be quick in my comments on energy storage. One of the things, I think, Delphine, you mentioned this, energy storage can play or can be utilized in various capacities. We really see that here in North Carolina. I mean, we have two serving the electric system in the western part of our state. There are two pumped hydro facilities that have been in operation for about 30 years. Constructed back when the sort of first generation nuclear generating facilities were constructed, and the purpose of these pump storage assets was to store the excess generation coming off the nukes, but we see them increasingly utilized to store the excess storage that's coming sort of in the midday timeframe as solar penetration has increased here in the Carolinas. I noticed that, I can't say much about this, but I want to mention that our electric utilities have filed a notice of intent with the FERC to increase to uprate those facilities, or uprate one of those facilities. And so citing the need to sort of store excess renewable energy that is coming onto the system and is anticipated to continue to do so for the coming years. We also have, so in addition to the pump storage hydro, we've had a few sort of smaller pilot type projects that have come online to look at different use cases for solar or for storage. We have a microgrid that we've been piloting, and then there's a standalone facility, and I can talk more about those in a minute. But we do have some we have sort of storage and existing use cases already on the system that we are learning from, and anticipate sort of going forward, taking advantage of what we're learning and adapting what we're learning as we develop new programs and move forward in working towards our carbon reduction goals. So I'll stop there, Ryan.
Yeah, no, that's great. And obviously, as a commissioner, you're responsible both for the grid scale side of things and also behind the meter storage, which is also a growth opportunity and of significant interest. So just curious to just maybe hear a little bit more about the steps that North Carolina is taking to go forward with storage, maybe especially on the behind the meter or customer sided storage, and any kind of challenges, creative solutions that you think you're running into that might be interesting for others to learn from.
Yep. So we're not a very high penetration rooftop state. Certainly we're nowhere near, we don't have nearly the rooftop penetration that the Western states have, though we do have some rooftop solar, and we currently have pending before us sort of a revised net metering program that the Duke utilities have recently implemented in their South Carolina service territories. So we're kind of moving towards second generation net metering programs here, and I anticipate those will involve storage, as costs associated with behind the meter storage come down. One of the areas that we the commission are really sort of pushing our utilities to explore and to do some research and development in the context of electrification of transportation. So we're looking obviously at residential scale EV programs, managed charging, as well as fleet electrification and school bus electrification, and how those assets can be utilized for storage and sort of grid service purposes. So all of that is, we're in our early sort of phases with those programs. But our utilities are working in each of those areas, and so we anticipate hearing from them and learning from them as they spend more time in these areas.
Great, fabulous. Thanks, Chair Mitchell. That's super useful. Let us turn now to Adam Berry, again, professional staff member with the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. And what hopefully has not gone unnoticed is that we had a rather significant new piece of legislation passed last year in 2021, sometimes called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. That particular law has a number of provisions related to energy storage, the grid, and electric vehicles. We definitely do not have time for Adam Berry to summarize all of these provisions or read them out to us. But Adam, I'm curious if you can give the audience maybe a high-level perspective on what some of those provisions are that you think are the most exciting or critical for energy storage.
Absolutely, and thanks so much, Ryan, and for LBNL for inviting me to participate on this panel. I guess my first thing is, I'd kind of jump back very briefly to the Energy Act of 2020 and a lot of the programs that we authorized in there for energy storage, R&D, short-term and long-term duration pilot programs, as well as storage and microgrid, in how they can work together. And, a lot of that we actually funded through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So I think it's really, the Energy Act set a lot of the foundation for the work that was going to be done. And then the infrastructure bill actually, obviously provided the dollars that were needed to get those programs really moving. So I think, in addition to those demonstrations that were funded, we also had some, that we think are very exciting on hydrogen R&D and storage. I think, we invested over $8 billion for 4 or more hydrogen hubs where, you are storing electricity in the form of hydrogen, or you're converting natural gas into hydrogen, and finding ways that we can, have that hydrogen as a zero carbon fuel to be putting that in regions where it is able to kind of house areas that have production, the ability to store, and then also the ability to have those end use applications like industry, transportation, and things of that nature. So I think, hydrogen production and storage is something that we are very excited about here on the committee. I think, another aspect that applies particularly to West Virginia and many of the states in Appalachia is the opportunities for storage on abandoned mine land sites and other sites that have faced, a lot of past energy development that are now, no longer being used, and they provide opportunities for pumped storage and battery siting and things of that nature. So I think, we're really excited to have, funding and program direction for finding ways that we can utilize those sites for energy storage. And then I think, one of the last, big pieces really is the ability to process and produce the materials that go into batteries. So I think, as I'm sure most of the people participating in this summit are well aware, most of the materials that go into our modern day batteries are not produced or processed in the United States. Most come from, sub-Saharan Africa, Australia, and particularly the processing of it comes from China. And so, some of the very important provisions in this bill were directing to how we can grow domestic production and processing of those materials that will, be attributable to batteries for, grid scale and home scale storage, as well as electric vehicles and other battery uses.
I will say, speaking with my Department of Energy hat on for a second, the bipartisan infrastructure law certainly has a lot of folks hopping over at DOE, a lot of really great, interesting new programs, many of which are focused directly or indirectly on storage. I guess another question for you, Adam, and I'm sure you get tired of fielding questions about the previously proposed Build Back Better Act, which of course included a number of additional provisions, including tax credits, both for standalone storage and electric vehicles. I want to stay out of politics here, but I am curious to hear a little bit of your perspective on priorities for additional legislation. What additional things didn't get done, I suppose, in the bipartisan infrastructure law that you think warrant attention in the coming months and years?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I mean, I think, while the Build Back Better Act is, not moving forward at this time, I think that there are still a lot of great pieces within it that either could move forward separately or as part of a different process. And one of those I think that would be remiss to not mention is the storage ITC. So investing, 30% investment tax credit in energy storage expenditures so that we are really getting this storage technology deployed. I think, a lot of what we've seen as difficulty over the course of time is that as these new technologies are being developed, a lot of time the uptake for various reasons, regulatory, financing, and others, these investments are not necessarily making their way into the market in some places as quickly as they could be. So, I think the storage ITC will definitely help to incentivize a lot of consumers into investing in storage, both at the grid level and, the individual building and EV scale. I think another thing that was touched on very, a little bit in the bipartisan infrastructure bill and could be greatly expanded is how we look at integrating storage with other generation sources right now. So, renewables. I also work on hydropower as well. So, how we integrate pump storage facilities with renewables, battery storage technologies with renewables, as well as, or nuclear or hydrogen or whatever it may be. And then, moving forward on getting the reliability factor of the storage helping to offset some of the intermittency of some of the renewables that are being brought onto the grid now. So I think those are some areas that we would really like to see some movement on in the future.
Super, thanks. Well, now at this point, I'd like to bring some of the other panelists in to see if they have any kind of comments or feedback on some of the things that Adam just mentioned. Obviously, lots of good stuff in the bipartisan infrastructure law. additional possible federal legislation in the future covering other aspects of energy storage. So for the other panelists, anyone who wants to jump in here, just curious to know what aspects of either recently passed or prospective future federal programs and policies are you most excited about or want to see?
Well, I'll jump in, Ryan, and take a shot. Certainly, without question, these days there is significant upward pressure on electric rates, for a number of reasons, and that it causes concern for us, for the economic regulators, and we have to be mindful of affordability, and sort of navigating these transitions are going to be very difficult as we try to do our best to contain costs. And so one of the things I think we've got to do is utilize the federal money that's coming out of these major pieces of legislation to the greatest extent possible, to the advantage of electric customers. And by that, I mean, we at least down here, we want to make sure we deploy those dollars in a way that positions our either customers or utilities to learn from new and emerging technologies or use cases for specific types of technologies, so that, as we move forward, the entire system benefits, or we are more strategic in the way we invest in our systems. I hope that makes sense. But in other words, I want to make sure that we leverage the federal money that's available to put us in the best position to operate the electric systems most efficiently going forward.
Yeah, I guess moving on to maybe another topic. During the course of this panel so far, we've focused to a pretty significant degree on kind of the 4-hour lithium-ion battery. We haven't mentioned 4-hour lithium-ion batteries, but that's sort of what's in a lot of people's minds because that's what's out there today. But of course, we've got storage, long duration storage. We've got DER aggregations and virtual power plants. We've got storage for customer-sited resilience applications. Of course, we have transportation electrification. And then we have a whole set of additional issues that have only been briefly touched on: end of life and recycling issues, critical materials, as Adam mentioned, issues related to energy justice and equity, and more. And so just curious to hear folks' thoughts about any initiatives that your organizations are involved with on some of these other areas, and what do we need to be thinking about as a policy and regulatory community to address some of these other applications and technologies and issues related to energy storage?
Sure, this is Delphine. I'll jump in on that one. So you mentioned the 4-hour storage, which is always a very interesting question because I think that's likely fairly California centric. As I mentioned, that is the current construct of the resource adequacy program. It's a minimum duration of 4 hours in order to be counted for resource adequacy. And so what we've seen is that that's effectively the maximum. But I think through the work that the CAISO was doing through our engineering studies, especially in kind of constrained areas, we're finding that 4 hours is not just the minimum, it's also sometimes too little. So I think we are working not only with our market participants, but with local regulatory authorities to give voice to that. But in addition to that, our market is also evolving. So we have a series of what we call market design stakeholder initiatives, where we go and work with our stakeholders to say, hey, there's this new technology. You might have, when lithium-ion first came on, we had to ensure that our optimization was able to actually model the charge and discharge capability of a battery. As we were working through the aggregation from the distribution side, we also needed to make sure that we were able to accommodate that pathway. So CAISO, we are technology neutral, and we want to ensure that all of the resources that are participating in our market can do so, have a pathway to do so, but also can do so on a level playing field. So again, distributed, that's an interesting one. Some of them are already participating as demand response. We are looking forward to seeing more of that participation in terms of both the discharge and charging side. But again, because some of these technologies are newer, the business models are also newer. As Adam mentioned, there's the investment tax credit, but those tend to, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those roll off after 5 years. And so that, plays into the calculus of a lot of our market participants of how they participate and how they're structured today in the CAISO market and how that might be different in the future. So I think as we're all trying to learn, the CAISO markets are also evolving to try to learn with our market participants. So those are just some of the challenges in terms of operating a very new asset, trying to understand the charge and discharge pattern of batteries and whether or not the charge and discharge would lead to some sort of degradation, and how do we actually reflect that in the market so that we're not unduly using those resources, but also treating them fairly, because other resources will also need to participate in the market to ensure reliability. So I think in those two realms, CAISO has stakeholder initiatives where we're improving our market design, trying to capture these new developments in our market. In the meantime, our market participants are also dealing with their own evolution and understanding how they can participate better, and maybe having their underlying business models and cost capital structures change, but also working with the regulatory folks on local regulatory authorities to understand where their vision is in terms of how these resources participate in our market. Or as Chair Mitchell mentioned, is sometimes there is a split between whether they're in the CAISO market or whether they stay on the distribution side and participate in NEM. So those are all live issues that we're trying to deal with simultaneously in moving forward with storage across the market.
And Ryan, if I could jump in here too, just very briefly, I think too, I talked a lot about the critical minerals and the processing and the production, but I think, when you look at where most of the domestic production, I guess in quotes, production of critical minerals is coming from, it's mostly from the recycling of batteries that we are seeing. And so I think the more that we can recycle production or old batteries that have been used already, either in an EV or in a larger grid scale storage battery, and make sure that we can get those materials back into new batteries, then that helps to reduce reliance on any kind of foreign supply chains that we've also seen, as a result of not necessarily just international conflicts, but also, a global pandemic where you just have supply chain constraints, and having the ability to have those resources here and more readily available will help us, be able to develop and deploy these resources much more quickly.
I had one thought, just shifting to something that Delphine said. I think as a federal regulator, I think some of our focus is on making sure that the markets are flexible enough so they can accommodate these new technologies. I think one of the shifts that I've seen while I've been here is we've focused on looking for ways to integrate new technologies. They all have very different features. So one approach may be taking a look at what services are needed to make sure we have affordable and reliable power, as Chair Mitchell mentioned. And so what do you procure in the market? And maybe the focus should be on services. What do you need? For example, operational flexibility in real time. So as part of that, FERC initiated some conferences last year to start talking about those things on the energy and ancillary services side, to kind of shift that paradigm and allow anyone to participate as long as they're able to provide the services. So just want to mention that.
Yeah, clearly no shortage of challenging issues here that all of you are confronting, but really important issues for the future of the nation and the future, of course, of storage as well. So we're now in the speed round. We have just a couple more minutes left. I'm curious to get sort of one sentence, if you could do it, one sentence responses of, kind of from your perch, what is the single most important thing we need to do as a policy and regulatory community to ensure that storage provides the maximum value in serving our nation well, our nation's clean energy goals, our nation's affordability goals, and our nation's reliability goals? So quick one sentence answers from each of you, if you wish to offer it. Maybe we can start with you, Charlotte.
All right, I'll go first. So I think without question, we're going to have to use every tool we can to take the carbon out of the electric system. And so to do that, you know, we're really going to have a good understanding of the value that a particular application provides to the grid. So I think that we can waste no more time and studying and understanding and analyzing, you know, what different technologies and applications of storage, you know, different applications of storage are doing to the grid, are behaving on the grid as we move forward. Because like I said, I think we're going to have to use storage in any number of applications to really achieve these goals and the timeframes we've set for ourselves. So you know, pushing forward to understand and analyze and quantify and learn how to operate the system with these technologies integrated into the system is critical.
All right, over to you, Delphine.
All right, I'll say this is from my own personal perspective, but I'm looking for cost-effective, long-duration storage that will get us through 7 cloudy days.
I wish I could make it so immediately. Great. Jignasa, on your side.
I don't have much more to add to what Chair Mitchell said. I think, again, storage is a valuable resource. Let's figure out how to use it. And to the extent our agency's focused on that, I'm glad to say we consider it an important resource.
Super. And Adam, take us home.
I think that maximizing the resource availability that we have for storage and utilizing all of the technologies at our disposal, from batteries to pump storage to everything in between, and making sure that we can get those in place as quickly, as cost effectively, and with, you know, domestically produced materials as soon as we can.
Super, thanks. Well, that does conclude our panel for the day. We're at time. Clearly, there is a lot being done, and there's more to do to optimize the policy and regulatory regime to maximize the benefits of storage. I want to thank the audience members for joining us today, and I especially want to thank our 4 terrific panelists. Thanks so much for your time, and hope folks found this panel helpful. All the best.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.